Dr. Copper, false breakout on false hopes. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Insights brought to you by Ainslie Bullion and the Gold and Silver Standard. Today, we welcome back Sam, who's been looking at copper, specifically what it's been doing and what it maybe isn't doing, or the misleading information that it's maybe providing on the charts. So how are you going today, Sam?
Good, Chris. Great to be back on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So you had a good look at it today, and it sort of, you broke the narrative a little bit. So from what we might be seeing in other sources. So there's a bit of debate going on about the copper price. So can you maybe start us off by just explaining this idea about Dr. Copper and why the copper price is important?
Yeah, sure. So we talked about it before, and it's easy to get caught up looking at the gold and silver price, but a lot of times those can be reactive as well after big announcements or something like this. Whereas really early in, I guess you could call the food chain or the production line, we have copper, which is used in almost everything. So any appliance you buy, if you think about going to any retail store or getting any appliances, they'll all have lots of copper in there, whether it's microwaves or personal electronic devices. And also the building industry. So if new homes, new big buildings are being built, that also tells you a lot about what's going on in the construction industry. And because it's so early on, this is a good, it's a good warning about coming recessions, as we've talked before.
Yeah, right. So you're sort of saying there that it's not so much that you looking at copper as the metal necessarily. You're looking at it because it's a supply for so many other industries.
Yes, well, value wise, who knows if it's a very good metal to stack. You need quite a big space to store all of that, but it's more just watched because it could be a sign of things to come, be a sign of future recession or crash coming. Because if someone anticipates, if you think about a building company or any big companies that produce products, if they're anticipating a recession or they just can't make more product, or the conditions are just bad, they'll stop putting through orders for copper. And the biggest buyer of copper is China. It's no surprise they make pretty much everything as well.
Yeah, right. That does make sense. You looked at the article because there's some analysts who are sort of implying that the copper price has broken out and that we're now heading much higher. And there's some supply sort of fundamentals that I've seen longer term that support that idea as well. But you sort of maybe cast a bit of doubt over that. Do you think that they're correct?
Well, most of this is based off the chart. So yes, there was a bit of a supply shock. It seems with copper, which has gone the other way, but a lot of the talk, at least that I've been reading, was about copper breaking out on a daily chart. Now, the only problem with that is the trend line, this descending trend line, doesn't really match up on the 4-hour chart and other charts. So it seems to be a case of kind of looking at the chart that might suit your interest best, which, look, it could be the 4-hour chart, it could be the daily chart, but all I have to say is it looks like a bit of a mixed bag, because when you're looking for a breakout to be confirmed, you want to make sure you're looking at a similar trend line across everything. If it's a certain level on a horizontal line you want to break, then it's quite easy. But if it's a descending trend line that looks different on the 4-hour chart than it does to the 1-day chart, and they're both saying different things, one is not even reached the resistance level, one is broken out and gone back down, it's hard to say just off of that.
Yeah, right. And I suppose that's interesting as well, because you can be right on different timeframes with it going up and down. You can be right with that fundamental view that potentially the price needs to go higher longer term, but technically it could be going through a long period of downward action before that happens. And if we're using it to indicate what's going on more broadly with the economy, that could line up with recession, which is, certainly being flagged for a long time on the horizon. How do you see the fundamentals? Do you think the fundamentals are looking good for copper? How do you view it?
Well, there's if you look at the fundamentals of what happened with that spike, part of it as well was just because people were expecting this bad data out of China to stimulate the central bank to do something. So the People's Bank of China, everyone thought, okay, they have to step in and save the day, because the manufacturing data is too weak. Surely they'll have to step in now, and they didn't. They didn't step in and ease anything. So it's kind of a war between actual traditional fundamentals and just waiting for the big bank to come in and save the day. And you can see that spike straight up, went straight back down after the People's Bank of China said, no, we're not going to we're not going to do any easing. We're not going to give any help to the economy. So it's the traders now. It kind of reminds me of a Godzilla movie. You know, there's a monster out there making trouble, and then when it gets bad enough, they invite the other monster, Godzilla, to come out and destroy it. You know, and then the city's caught in the crossfire and gets halfway destroyed either way. So it's kind of like people are treating the bank like Godzilla, saying, "Come on, is it bad enough now for you to come out and destroy everything, or destroy the city in the process?" So that's kind of what it feels like. But yeah, look at you can't necessarily say the rise in copper was only from a supply shock or it was only because of the bank. But I definitely think that bank decision to keep the status quo was a big reason it just got knocked back down.
I always love your analogies, and that is a good one. And really, that's what we've been feeling for quite a while. Your Godzilla analogy there, that we aren't quite sure, and we really are looking all the time to see what that catalyst is. Is it bad enough to unleash the other monster? That's where we've been. So I suppose probably along that train of thought, beyond copper itself, is there other big news we need to look forward to this week? Because I know that it has been a period of time where any significant news has the potential to push us over the edge one way or the other. So what are you looking at?
Yeah, well, that copper news, because look, people who are trading recessions, which is a lot of gold and silver buyers, which is a lot of short sellers, people who are trading recessions like to look at copper. They also like to look at employment data, because employment data is also one of those reasons for banks to make decisions, because it's very out in the open. People aren't going to be losing their livelihood and not be putting pressure on the government or pressure on the banks to do something. And big news coming out from the USA tonight at 10:30 is the jobless claims. So the continuing jobless claims, those will be people filing for unemployment. And just one personal issue I have with jobs data. I know it's typically included in data, but it's people having more than one job or people working part-time.
Yes. Yep.
And it's just the fact that, and this is why we look at things like copper, because if you have an apartment building with 100 people in each, 100 people in their units in this one big apartment building, so 50 people, maybe they get laid off and they have to go start driving Uber part-time or something like this. Well, your employment rate's still 100%. Or if they're doing something small for work, they're technically not unemployed, or they can't get file for unemployment. It's too black and white, basically. So this is where a measure of people actually consuming things and buildings being made is where Dr. Copper comes in to actually help. But it's not always what is actually happening. It's how traders perceive things as well. And there will be a lot of traders watching these jobless claims tonight, just like they're watching the Bank of China's decision earlier. And we could see that next nudge up or down in the copper price, as well as all the other metals.
And I really would like to reiterate that point, because it resonates with me, this idea that unemployment numbers, I'd much rather listen to something like copper, the price of copper and what that's doing, than unemployment numbers, because we've had a lot of controversy around revisions to those numbers, where you get, month after month, better than expected unemployment, so less people losing their jobs, better than expected. But then the follow-up report you get sort of a few minutes after that new headline good number is the revision to the previous month, saying, it actually wasn't as good last month as we thought. Like, some of those numbers seem like they're just making them up effectively. It's quite outrageous, really.
Well, we hit our take profit. Now we can tell you the truth. It's essentially it. And you mentioned that there was a news article I was reading. It's about Australian employment. Last year, this came out. I believe it was in September. Don't quote me on that, but it was saying that a record number of Australians in one of the quarters had more than one job. So what does that tell you? It tells you that
Yes.
people don't have enough money, whether it's the cost of living or they can't find full-time work, so they have to get 2 part-time jobs. And when it's part-time, you lose all sorts of benefits, a lot of power as well compared to someone with full-time
Well,
work.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know that many people who go, "Oh, I love my first job so much that I really just want to, fill my rest of my time with the second one." They're doing it because they have to, not because they want to.
Yeah, and juggling the times as well, and job security is a big thing. So if people are seeking, more part-time work, that shows that they potentially have a big issue with job security.
Very important. All right. Well, thanks for all of that this week, Sam. I think we'll be paying close attention to those numbers tonight, and the follow-up numbers we get later in the week as well. Because do we get non-farm payrolls this week? Is that the follow-up we get on Friday? Is that how that works?
Non-farm payrolls are on the first week of the month, so the first Friday of the new month. But yeah, this employment data will come out tonight, Sydney, Melbourne time at 10:30 p.m.
Okay, so this is almost our mid-month update on what we can expect for the next non-farm payrolls. Is that how that works?
Well, we have this is the jobless claims, and then the non-farm payrolls will be about the number of new jobs created. So this is where they can also have an opportunity to fluff numbers potentially and then revise later. So
yeah, okay.
We'll see what happens there. But there's more news from the Fed coming out in the next week. But as for this week, probably the biggest one is that jobless claims data coming out tonight at 10:30 p.m.
Yeah, right. Okay, well then we'll be definitely watching that one closely. Thanks again, Sam.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks everyone for watching. Remember, any questions or comments, reach out on those social platforms. That's us for this week. We'll be back next week, probably on Tuesday with Alex to discuss all things markets and metals. Until then, have a great weekend, everyone.